Hey there, how you doing? I hope you're good in the hood. I'm busy explaining to you guys the travesty of this apartheid crisis in my neighborhood that is currently Wilgehevel, which is in Roodepoort, which is in Johannesburg, which is in Gauteng province, which is in South Africa. I want to help you get just how far from glory this nation has fallen, okay? I've explained to you the Soweto dynamic, or I.E, a previously group areas act, a previously black group area in the days of Apartheid. That's where I grew up, in the Soweto, right? In Soweto, Claudia, Soweto, that's where we are at. Those of us who got gentrified by going to Model C schools, we don't call this Soweto anymore. It's just the Soweto, all right? Gentrification will make you calling things the Soweto. Alrighty, cool. So that's where I grew up, in the Soweto, in Claudia, Soweto. That's what I experienced in the earlier parts of my upbringing therein. In colored areas like Ealdo, there was so much violence in the days of apartheid, guys. Black people used to fight a lot as well with colored people. Like, it was like such a taboo. Like, the way that the white supremacist government so put a groove between us all, so segregated us, and caused groups that were loftier on the rung or the scale to underestimate the ones that were lower. There was literally a time when there was a proper thorough war between colored people and black people. In other countries in the world, largely South Africa is the only one that actually separates between black people and colored people. Other parts of the planet would find the disastrous war between colored people and black people weird, because they would look at us and be like, but you're all black. But because of that separation, because of that apartheid regime, there was proper danger, as in, you better run for your life for a black person if they dared enter into a colored area. Similarly too, was there grave danger for a colored person to enter into a black neighborhood. You could get killed for that being your case. I remember one time, Baragwanath Hospital, right, which is the most famous hospital in all of Africa. If you don't know about it, where in the world have you ever studied history? Because you clearly haven't. Okay, so Bara, back then, today it's called Chris Hani Baragwanath. They still call it Baragwanath, but they added Chris Hani to it after Chris Hani died. All right, as a way to, like, I guess, commemorate him, because he died a martyr, like he died a political struggle martyr type thing. So they named Bara after him. Bara, I remember, Baragwanath is a hospital, but opposite Bara there is this like taxi rank, and it's quite prolific in Soweto, right? I remember, you know how the Asians, like Chinese people or Koreans, how when they go to a country, man, how they stick out like a sore thumb with all of their cameras. They want to see everything as a tourist attraction. Like, Asian tourists are the funniest. Like, you will notice them everywhere. They could trip on a banana peel and still keep their camera intact. Okay, they make for the nerdiest tourists. And here it is that there was this like nerdy tourist from Asia at the end of apartheid, just so you can understand, when as a racial regime impresses in the minds of people how they stick to their satanic guns, how they have been so conditioned to hate anyone that is not like them because they've been trained that you stick together in your racial groups and don't go out. Black people, at like apartheid was over, it was after 1984. My mom and I, it wasn't just me and my mom, I think my sister was in the car too. We're driving, I think, to Southgate, and we passed the taxi rank, and there was this mob, and we didn't understand what was going on. So, I mean, you know, spectator value, we were like, what's going on? My mom like slowed the living daylights down. For the life of me, do you know why there was that mob that was threatening a human individual? It's because they dared encounter an Asian man, tourist, in Bara. Like, the dude was like, I want to go to Soweto and I want to see Bara. Apartheid is over, so I can go. I want to see where Mandela lived. Soweto! The dude came to Soweto with all of his paraphernalia, cameras. He was accompanied by black friends. He got mobbed by the taxi drivers at Bara, by the commuters at Bara, anyone at all that lived there, got deep Kloof Soweto, that was in the periphery or the region of that Asian guy, mobbed him. I was so scared for him. I remember my heart being so broken. He was so freaking out. He was being protected by his black friends that helped him to have a tour here in Soweto. But people literally encircled this Asian. He was such a young man. He looked like he could have been 21 or 22. They encircled him and were like, "Wenzani lana? Hamba, buyela uphuma khona. Ngisho awusifuni." What that basically means is, what do you want here? Leave here. You don't want us. You are the one that treated us like trash in the days of apartheid. So get out. What are you doing in Soweto? That is what apartheid did. All of that conditioning of black people to be segregated and all of that fighting and the underestimate, like when you underestimate a person and you elevate somebody else above them, Asians belong to the Indian category, you will end up having hostilities, like a little bit of an, a resentment for people that are within the group of those that are called better than you. And so this dude, I don't think he got killed, but he was literally told, get out of Soweto. You don't get to bring all of your cameras and everything and take photos of us poor black people. Just get out. At that stage, apartheid had ended. That happened, I was still a child, so I could have been like 12 years old, type establishment thing. And that was still an issue, even though we had already voted for a new president and everything was starting to get better. But people were still holding on to that hatred of the past. That would never happen today. Like, there's white people roaming the streets of Soweto playing, like, skipping. There are white men taking out lobola for black girls that live in Pimville, Soweto. So it no longer happens, okay? But before we could be weaned off that mentality that, what is an Asian person doing here in Soweto? They would fight anyone that had a different skin color because of that racial indiscretion of the past and that segregation and Apartheid Areas Act thing. So that thing that happened to that Asian man, it was a continuation of what was an existing brewing war between black people and colored people. The war was especially prolific between blacks and coloreds, okay, where it is that thanks to the segregation under apartheid, even though essentially today, like, other countries think of us as the same thing, nobody sees the difference between Trevor Noah and a black person in the US. He's just a black dude. But in South Africa, he's colored. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it doesn't matter how much Xhosa the guy might speak, he's still colored because, he's got that mixed blood type establishment thing. Black and colored people were at such loggerheads that if a person in Soweto were to mistakenly find themselves in Eldorado Park is a historically group areas act for colored people. So it was separated literally by just a highway. So Soweto, this is like Soweto, and this is Eldos. It's like so ridiculous. Naturina was a historically white area, and it got flooded by black people so much that it ended up being mostly black. But there are still white people living in Naturina that were, like, I guess they bought their houses in the days of apartheid. They didn't care to move because they weren't afflicted by the racism of the apartheid regime enough to, like, get out of Naturina because it's so full of black people now. But Naturina was like a white area, which is literally in close proximity to Eldorado Park, which is a colored-only area, and Soweto, of course, was a black area. And if you mistakenly sneezed and found yourself out of the border of Soweto and in the border of Eldos, you could get stoned to death by colored people. Similarly, too, if a colored person mistakenly sneezed and landed in just the beginning of Soweto, he could get stoned by black people. It was that bad. There was such a war between black and colored people that we ended up developing a belief in our hearts as black kids growing up that coloreds are violent, they are dangerous, you're dangerous. Similarly to colored people grew up believing that step away from black folk because then you ain't gonna be right. And unfortunately, that sentiment is still in existence today, but it is getting eradicated, where black people have got this mentality where colored people are concerned and vice versa. It's like coloreds refuse for the life of them to acknowledge us as belonging to them because they subscribe more to the white side, and black people refuse to let colored people undermine them because we're out of apartheid now. It's not like that across the board ubiquitously, but it still largely exists. I saw it in corporate South Africa. Literally, there has always just been this passive aggression between black people and colored people, and it was started by the apartheid regime. Right? And the reason why that is the case is because colored people were given better treatment in the days of apartheid than black people, so the hostilities inside black people are still rife and rich. When, therefore, black women have got quite the bone to pick with black men who date colored girls, I don't agree that they should be upset, huffing and puffing and throwing their toys out the cot, because seriously, guys, you need to be the change that you want to see. You need to start embracing situations that make you uncomfortable, but I do get where they're coming from. It is because historically we were made to feel like we are substandard to people who are mixed, or I guess white or Indian or whatever, to a point where when our men go and marry women in the colored community, it makes us feel as if, now that the borders have been erased and the lines have been blurred, you think now that you can go and do better than me because apartheid told you that that's what's going on. People need to be cured from that kind of mindset. Not everybody who observes an interracial couple cringes, but there are a lot of black people that still cringe at watching interracial relationships. And to cure that, you need to give context and history to help people understand that the only reason why there is such bad blood between colored people and black people in this country, or why there is such bad blood between black women and white women, especially when our men go and marry their women, or our women go and marry their men, whatever, all this mixing. The reason why that's there is because of original sin that started due to a bunch of people with no discretion that saw it fit to give the best of things or better things to one group based on their skin color. So that was what was going on in South Africa. Let's move to the next part because we are still explaining the travesty of the situation. Okay,